Awesome. And again, I am delighted to be here with you all today. My name is Raquel Reddy, Vice President of Community Development here at NCST. And alongside the images you're seeing here are Emmy McClintock, my colleague here at NCST. Emmy is our policy analyst. And Emmy is going to be introducing our presenter today, Mike Kelley. But before we get started, I just want to mention a couple things. One, it is a timely topic and obviously conversation around how elections impact housing. We're going to hear a lot about the bipartisan views that are out there right now, especially from our presidential candidates. So sit back, relax, have your questions ready. We are going to ask that you provide your questions in the Q&A or the chat feature as we go through with the presentation this morning. But I'd like to welcome Emmy. And Emmy, if you'd like to introduce our presenter today.
I
Thanks.
would love to. Thank you, Raquel. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. As Raquel mentioned, my name is Emmy McClintock, and I work on the policy team here at NCST. And I'm very excited to welcome today's special guest from the Bipartisan Policy Center, Michael Kelley. Michael Kelley currently serves as the director of BPC Action, where he focuses on federal advocacy for bipartisan solutions. As a member of the Neighborhood Homes Coalition, Mike has been paramount in garnering congressional support as we push for final passage of the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. Prior to joining BPC Action, Mike worked in various roles at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as the principal advisor to the secretary, deputy secretary, and senior department officials, where he resided on matters related to federal, state, and local governments. Previously, Mike worked as Deputy Chief of Staff and Legislative Director for former Representative Marlon Stutzman, where he managed the congressman's work on the House Financial Services Committee. And he also served as a legislative assistant to former Representative Steve Buyer, where he oversaw the work on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. Mike, I think I can speak for everyone when I say we're so excited to have you and hear about what impacts this upcoming election might have on housing policy. And with that, I'll kick it over to you to take it away.
Thanks, Emmy. Thanks, Raquel. It's good to be with you today. Appreciate the invite and looking forward to the conversation. As Raquel said, I think it's timely as we are just a few short months away from Election Day 2024. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this works. Can everybody, does that work?
We're good. Yes.
Great. Go ahead and put it here. All right, there we go. Appreciate again everybody joining today and for Raquel and Emmy for your invite and having me. I'll try to go through this fairly quickly because I think I find Q&A more interesting, and hopefully this is a lot of information most of the guests and people viewing already know. But so 2024 elections and the outlook for housing. Just quick overview. I think we'll go through housing today. Both candidates' housing plans, very high level. Just a quick overview of the 2024 election, and then how things might look come January 3rd next year and January 20th, and then what it might look like if it's divided government or full control of either party. So starting off, housing has really had a moment, I would say in the last year or two, but really more recently has taken center stage during both the conventions, both the Republican convention and the Democratic convention, as we've seen in the last couple months. Probably, I would say, the most housing has been talked about since the housing collapse 2008, 2009. I think when you talk to members on the Hill and staff on the Hill, it is the one issue that their boss members consistently hear of when they go back home and speak to their constituents, that there's just not enough supply and the affordability is just not there for them. So turning to Vice President Harris's housing plan. Most recently, she's laid out a pretty ambitious plan, which builds off of the current president, Joe Biden's housing supply plan. Calls for expansion of the LIHTC, which does enjoy broad bipartisan support in the Congress right now. First ever tax incentive for building starter homes, new federal fund to spur innovation, housing construction, as well as $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers as well as more generous support for first-generation home buyers. She's called for restrictions on institutional investors purchasing single-family homes for rent, which has been in the news in the past few months. And they estimate her plan would lead to the construction of 3 million new housing units during her first term. Turning to President Trump's plan, I think since we have 4 years of his first term, we could probably pretty confidently say where he'll head when it comes to housing. Will likely focus on housing finance reform, deregulation, and targeted tax breaks. Should President Trump win again, we'll likely see a move by the Federal Housing Financing Agency to remove Fannie and Freddie from conservatorship. Toward the end of the first Trump term, there was movement toward getting both Fannie and Freddie out of conservatorship until President Biden won and replaced Director Calabria. Republicans view generally higher interest rates as the principal driver of housing affordability. I think they will seek to curb federal spending, as we've seen over the last 2 years, certainly in the House of Representatives, as well, so the Federal Reserve can lower interest rates, which is timely because I believe the Fed is meeting right now. I don't know if an announcement has come out since I've been in the studio here, but it's widely expected that the Fed will cut interest rates by to 0.50 basis points. Trump's White House Council on Eliminating Barriers to Affordable Housing Development issued a report. I believe it came out January 19th, 2021, so might have been lost and a lot of people might not have seen it, but that could serve as a blueprint for deregulation measures during a Trump second term. The Republican platform calls for tax incentives to support first-time homebuyers and opening limited portions of federal lands to allow for new home construction. Both President Trump and his vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, have linked immigration to the housing shortage, arguing that the influx of migrants increases demand for a limited supply of homes. So immigration obviously is a big talking point for the former president, so that will likely spill into the housing space as well. And I see this last one's cut off here. Sorry about that. Senator Vance has also been one of the very few Republican elected officials to be critical of investor real estate purchases as well. So there is echoing the same theme as Vice President Harris. So there is some commonality there as well. Turning to the 2024 election. I think it's safe to say that this has been an election cycle unlike any other. The last 2 years, quite frankly, has been quite chaotic, both not only in the White House, but also in the Congress. But since the current president has dropped out of the race, polls have tightened, and it's really a jump ball at this point. On the Senate, the map is heavily skewed toward the Republican Party. They are looking for a number of pickup opportunities. I think it's safe to say that West Virginia is firmly in the Republican column as of right now, thanks to Joe Manchin retiring. And then they're looking at a couple pickup opportunities, which we can get into as well. And the House Representatives, pure toss-up, quite frankly. There's very few toss-up races. Many of them in California and New York, but as of right now, I think it's anybody's game. I would say that, again, this election cycle is very unique in that literally all three, both chambers in the Congress and the White House are up for grabs. Turning to the White House, again, this might be slightly dated since I wrote it, but Real Clear Politics polling average has Vice President Harris up 1.8 points, certainly within the margin of error. Battleground states have shown similarly close races. Pennsylvania tied. Wisconsin, Harris is up 1.4%. Michigan, Harris is up 1.1%. Georgia is tied. Arizona, Trump is up 1%. North Carolina, Trump is up less than 1%. And Nevada, Harris is up less than 1%. If you look at there are a lot of websites where you can do an electoral college scenarios. If you look at states where Trump probably is going to win and states Harris is probably going to win, it's at 219 for Trump and 208 for Harris, with 111 up for grabs. So again, this is far from over as we are heading down the stretch here. On the Senate side, again, map is heavily skewed in the Republicans' favor. Republicans are defending only 11 seats in very safe ruby red states like Indiana, Missouri, Mississippi, North Dakota, Nebraska, Tennessee, Utah, and Wyoming. I would say only Texas and Florida are somewhat competitive. And I would caveat that word somewhat. I would highlight that word somewhat because at the end of the day, it is Texas and Florida, and there are two incumbents in Ted Cruz and Rick Scott that are on the ballot, and it's very, very difficult to take out an incumbent. And still, Cook Political Report has rated them likely Republican. Democrats, on the other hand, defending 23 seats, including West Virginia, as I mentioned. Two other states worth mentioning, Montana and Ohio, with current Senators John Tester and Sherrod Brown as the incumbents. The difference being that these are three states that Trump will win. So very uphill battle for both Senator Tester and Senator Brown. Covered that third point in that West Virginia is likely already flipped, in that Joe Manchin announced his retirement a couple months ago. So that actually puts Republicans, if they hold, again, all the seats that they currently have and are up for re-election in November, at 50 seats. One more would give them a majority, and that's all you need in the Senate, or quite frankly, in the House. In Montana, Senator Tester has consistently trailed his opponent, Tim Sheehy. The most recent poll has Sheehy up 51% to 45%. There are other states Democrats are defending that you could argue are competitive seats: Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Maryland, and Nevada. But the Democrat candidate there has consistently led in polling. So, long way of saying, I think the likeliest outcome right now is pretty much a flip of where we are currently, a 51-49 Republican Senate. That said, anything can happen as we get into October, leading up to Election Day. On the House side, for those of us that do this for a living and have followed the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress, it's been very interesting. But currently, Republicans have a very narrow majority, 220 seats to 211. There are currently 4 vacancies in the House. Democrats only need to pick up 4 seats to flip the House after just 2 years of the minority, which is interesting and somewhat unique. As I said, the playing field is limited. Thanks to states that are very far red, very, very far blue. Cook Political Report rates just 24 seats as toss-ups, 13 Republican and 11 Democratic, and many of these races are not in battleground states. States like California, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Colorado, Washington, and Alaska. I guess depending on what day you ask me, I would say the likeliest outcome is a narrow Democratic majority, a flip of kind of where we are right now. But again, I think a scenario that is totally possible is if Trump does win the White House, it's likely his coattails might bring over some of these more vulnerable Republicans and maintain control of the House for Republicans. Divided government, what we currently have, is likely. It's not impossible, again, for Democrats or Republicans to hit the trifecta or the triple crown, whatever you want to call it, but there's a high probability of split control. Some fun facts here. The last time a first-term Republican president was elected with a Democratic Congress, George H.W. Bush in 1988, 36 years ago. And the last time a first-term Democratic president was elected with a Republican Congress, a whopping 140 years ago, with Grover Cleveland in 1884. So let's go through what might be the agenda in Congress on housing if there's a full Democratic control with Vice President Harris winning and Democrats winning majorities in the Senate and the House. I think it's safe to say they'd be eager to address housing issues, many of which were left on the cutting room floor after Build Back Better passed the House, and then what later became the Inflation Reduction Act. And so I think the main tension for Democrats would be between President Harris, who's laid out a plan to focus primarily on expanding housing supply, and the likely chair of House Financial Services, Maxine Waters, who favors and is clearly on record for more funding for demand-side HUD programs, think Section 8 public housing, down payment assistance, and is skeptical of providing additional subsidies for developers. On the flip side, Republican control, if former president wins and has majorities in the House and Senate, Republicans will focus on using the reconciliation process to extend the expiring provisions of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, or TCJA. The good news for housing is this would likely include housing-related tax credits such as the low-income housing tax credit, the mortgage interest deduction, mortgage insurance deductibility, as well as the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, which Emmy mentioned at the top of the presentation. Other Republican housing initiatives would likely be at the regulatory level at FHFA and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. If it's divided government, would necessitate some big horse trading as both parties seek to reopen the tax code next year and push their own priorities. On the table, no surprise, would be low-income housing tax credit, neighborhood homes tax credit, new neighborhood home tax credit, first-time home buyer tax credit with down payment assistance, mortgage insurance deductibility. Proposals to increase spending on HUD programs would likely be rejected in favor of low or no-cost proposals. Think the EMB Act or mobility vouchers. Wrapping up here, I wanted to flag BPC Action supported housing bills in the current Congress. This is not an exhaustive list, but ones that we've been advocating for in various committees on both sides of the Capitol. The Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act is the LIHTC expansion bill, broadly bipartisan in the House and the Senate. Don't need to read all the bill sponsors there, but again, expands and strengthens the LIHTC by increasing the amount of credits allocated to each state and increasing the number of affordable housing projects that can be built using private activity bonds. A version of this was included in the Chairman Jason Smith of House Ways and Means and Chairman Ron Wyden of Senate Finance bipartisan tax bill that overwhelmingly passed the House back in January. It has stalled in the Senate. There was one failed vote right before the August recess that failed to get cloture in the Senate. But the good news is for housing and housing advocates is that the issues of with that bill were not housing related. Neighborhood Homes Investment Act established a new tax credit to support the rehab and new construction of single-family homes in distressed communities. This has been introduced the last few Congresses, both in the House and the Senate. The House sponsor is not me. It's different Mike Kelley from Pennsylvania. But this is a bill that there are a lot of housing groups that are widely pushing it, widely supportive of it, and are hopeful that when we get to next year and the expiration of TCJ, that this will be one of the priorities for Congress. Turning to the demand side, the Family Stability and Opportunity Vouchers Act. This is a bill that would authorize a new type of housing choice voucher designed to help families with young children 6 or younger, provided those families are homeless or unstably housed, at risk of displacement, or living in an area of concentrated poverty. This is a bill that has also been introduced the last few Congresses, would create 250,000 new vouchers within the HCV program at HUD. Again, designed to help young families, young children get in areas of opportunity and move into better areas that have better schools, hospitals, other wraparound services. Choice and Affordable Housing Act, again, another bill that's been introduced the last few Congresses and supported by a number of housing groups. It would authorize programs and grants to incentivize landlord participation in HUD's Housing Choice Voucher Program particularly in low poverty areas. Part of the issue with the Housing Choice Voucher program currently is a lot of them are returned unused. There's just not a lot of places that voucher holders can go find to live and utilize the voucher. A lot of that has to do with landlord participation in the voucher program. I think if you ask HUD and how to study this, landlords would tell you that the voucher program and the requirements of it are onerous and burdensome, and this would help remove some of those burdens and financially incentivize landlords to participate in the program. The Yes in My Backyard Act, the YIMBY Act, this is a bill currently moving its way. It's gotten through the House Financial Services Committee on a unanimous vote, waiting floor action on the House side. It would require CDBG program recipients to submit information regarding their implementation of certain land use policies, such as policies for expanding high-density single-family and multifamily zoning. When CDBG programs submit their consolidated plans to HUD, this would be a new requirement that they would have to fill out in their plan how they are, or what steps they're taking to basically remove some of these onerous regulations to increase the supply of affordable housing. Additional resources, I think the team's going to make this presentation available to the participants here, but you'll see BPC Action's American Housing Act legislative brief. We put this out at the end of last Congress, focused on the 3 areas of supply, preservation, and demand. The idea behind it was to show that there is bipartisan buy-in on all aspects of housing. Our goal is to update this as we get to the end of the year and present something, roll out something new next year. BPC Action supported housing bills. There's another link to our website that you'll see all our endorsed bills for the current Congress. And then probably should have mentioned this at the forefront, the Jerry Ronald Terwilliger Center for Housing Policy. This was launched almost 3 years, just about 3 years ago at BPC. It's the first named policy center at the Bipartisan Policy Center, named after Ron Terwilliger, former developer and housing philanthropist who is one of the biggest champions of affordable housing in America today. A link to that page where you'll be able to find all of the products the Terwilliger team has put out over the last 3 years, including our events and webinars. And that's it. Hopefully that was short and sweet, Raquel and Emmy, and
Thank you.
we can go to Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just want to confirm with you, Mike, that yes, we're going to make your presentation available. We do archive these presentations on our website. And so if you do go to ncst.org under our media content, you will see them all archived there. So thank you for providing that for us.
Yep.
Mike, we do have a couple questions coming in the Q&A. Let me just hop to those before I ask a question I had. The first question is, would you say that the need for a greater supply and diversity of affordable housing has bipartisan consensus?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a recognition, especially when you say the diversity of housing, that starter homes aren't really being built in America today, and that's why you find a lot of younger Americans having a hard time getting into the housing market. So I do think there is broad support for certainly increasing supply of housing. I think there may be disagreements among the parties on how to get there, but yeah, for sure, I think there is broad bipartisan support for increasing supply and certainly the diversity of homes. I think it's important to know that what may work in New York City, doesn't work in South Dakota, doesn't work in other parts of the country. So I think that's why we've taken a comprehensive approach that what one member may care about, another member may not, just given their parochial interests. So I think it's important to have a comprehensive approach to this problem.
Thank you for that answer. We've got another question here from Joshua Stewart with Fahi, which says BPC put a poll in the field in 2021 with Morning Consult, which, among other things, tested how different messages around housing resonated with different parts of the electorate. I think it was one of the most important pieces of work the field has done in a decade, but I don't know that a lot of national advocates have taken the results very seriously. I have not seen a change in the way we, as a field, have messaged our work. How do we get affordable housing advocates to talk differently to different audiences? How do we, as a field, message most effectively to get the most support from elected officials of different political persuasions?
No, that's a great question, and thanks for referencing the Morning Consult polls that the Twilliger Center has put out. We've actually done a few since then. Again, on the website if anybody wants to go check it out. Yeah, I think to my earlier point that part of the reason we put out the American Housing Act was a lot of it was kind of aimed at showing that there is Republican buy-in and support for certain housing proposals. I think just to be very paint in broad strokes here, I think housing probably historically has been viewed, quote unquote, as a Democratic issue that they own. And we wanted to show that that's not entirely true, that there is, bipartisan buy-in on a lot of these things. And there's just differences on kind of how to go about it, right? I think I also handle our economic policy work here for BPC Action at BPC, but a lot of it is driven by the federal debt and just there's limited dollars to go around. And I think that in terms of the question on how to message, again, I think you need to meet members and staff where they are. I use this example all the time. I mean, public housing, there's like 150,000 or so units in New York City, which is the highest concentration of public housing units left in America. It's a big issue for New York City reps. But that doesn't mean, you can't talk about it with other members and try to showcase why that's important to, say, some members in New York City. But at the same time, you got to meet other members where they are. If it's, tribal housing issues, like I don't think there's a ton of tribal housing issues in New York City, but there is, North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Arizona, and that's also a big issue for members. So I think it's more about meeting your audience where they are, and not trying to, shove down a member or staff's throat the same type of message that may not resonate with them. And so I don't know if that answers his question, but again, I think it's trying to be creative, and showing that it's not just a one-sided party issue, that one party owns it, that there are members on both sides that care very deeply about all these issues and trying to bring them together and on a more comprehensive basis.
Thank you for that, Mike. And so Josh will have to let us know if he has any other follow-up questions. Another question that has come in the Q&A is from Kevin Moody. Hi, Kevin. What effect do you think the interest rate cut today will have on the real estate industry?
I think it's positive. I don't know if you'll see the impact right away. I mean, I think this stuff takes a while to kind of cycle through. I think part of the issue is, interest rates were so low during COVID that even if the Fed cuts or when they cut today, if they haven't already, it's still higher than, many points higher than it was a couple of years ago. And again, I'm not an economist, so I don't want to speak to kind of the macroeconomic effects of it, but I do think in the long term, hopefully it is positive, and can help ease, some of the affordability challenges that we've been seeing over the last couple of years. But I don't know if it's not going to be an immediate near-term effect.
Thank you. Another question has come in. HUD just released new regulations approving manufactured housing that allow single-family manufactured homes to offer up to 4 dwelling units, but many states have anti-manufactured housing zoning on the books. Has there been any bipartisan discussion on promoting the development of promoting development of manufactured housing or working to incentivize this low-cost means of affordable housing development?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and something that Twilliger Center has looked into. And I think part of the issue is just somewhat of the stigma that manufactured housing has, or may currently have. I think people hear manufactured housing and maybe they think of, mobile homes or double wides or whatever. And that's just not the case anymore. The Twilliger Center, BPC's had 3 summits over the last 3 summers, and I've had a couple panels over the years on innovative solutions to housing supply, and it's unbelievable, what some companies are doing and putting out and how they build these homes. And more recently, I would point to Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, the ranking member on Senate Banking. He's put out his Road to Housing Act. It's Republican only right now, but part of the bill would change the definition of manufactured housing in it and the way HUD defines it. And so I think, I think it unfortunately suffers a little bit of past stigma and what people may think manufactured housing is. I'll go back to my days at HUD. For those that live in DC or maybe visited DC, I forget what we called it, but the Affordable Housing Showcase, it was on the National Mall, and we brought in number of companies and developers, and you were able to go into some of these homes, and it's unbelievable. Like it's incredible what a manufactured home looks like, and it doesn't look really any different than, I say, a site built home. So I know MHI is a good friend of ours. I know they do a great job of promoting manufactured housing, and I think the more advocates can work with states to try to change some of these laws on the books that prohibit, because I think they're dated, and I think they kind of are just from a past era.
Thank you. We've got a couple more questions that have come in, so hang tight, Michael. Here, next question up is, what do you attribute the substantial increases in insurance premiums for affordable housing projects? To what do you attribute the substantial increases in insurance premiums for affordable housing projects that PHAs are facing?
I honestly don't. We haven't done much in that space, so I don't know if I can really comment on to the specific increase in insurance premiums. What I can say is the team has done a webinar and some work in this space, and just the fact that insurance companies are leaving. This is not specific to public housing, but insurance companies are leaving states and cities, and it's getting harder to insure just homes in general. A lot of that also has to do with just the increase in disasters and storms and different disasters across the country. So I know it's an issue that there are many groups working on. Congress, as with most things, is somewhat behind on the issue, and I think you may see more interest by Congress on the insurance issues as it relates to housing.
Good. You make great points about that. We'll continue to monitor it. A question in from Ryan McKinless. Have there been any discussions at the federal level regarding challenges to affordable housing brought on by rising insurance? So similar vein.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think there are members that are tracking that, especially when you look at members from like coastal states, Florida, California, at the wildfires. I know I would say it's an issue that's gaining more traction and attention among members and staff and the committee staff in Congress.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Okay, those are all the questions that we've seen. Let me just double check in our chat if we've had anything come in there, which we have. So the first one is, having worked in housing advocacy for the last 21 years, this is the first time that we have seen both candidates prioritize housing, public housing, and home ownership. What should we be doing as advocates to ensure both have our voices in their plans?
I mean, I'm a government relations person. I think going to your members, making sure they know who you are, making sure they know what your priorities are, making sure they know the challenges that their constituents are facing when it comes to either buying a home or renting a home. Members are very aware of what their constituents are going through, whether it's in housing or any other issue for that matter. And quite frankly, there's only so much the executive branch can do without legislation. And so I think any plan, as I laid out in my presentation, a lot of this stuff that both Vice President Harris and former President Trump have proposed will need congressional action and needs legislation. So, it sounds cliche or cheesy, but go talk to your congressman, go talk to the district staff, go talk to the state staff if it's a Senate office, making sure they know, what they're doing. Beyond that, on the state level, we don't do a ton of state level work here at BPC, but going to your state reps, going to your state senators. If you live, in a state capital, a lot of action happens there and happens quicker, quite frankly, than on the federal level. And then certainly on your local level, a lot of this stuff really happens at the local level. And quite frankly, I think what you see sometimes is what a state may be doing or a program that they may have implemented. Congress may pick up and try to, put legislation forward on a federal level. And so state and local is key to make sure, housing advocates are engaging with your leaders at that level.
Thanks, Mike. And I also have a question I wanted to raise with you as well. And this kind of goes back to the supply side and on Trump's position of opening up federal lands and your thoughts on that. Some questions that come up for me are just sort of what's the additional infrastructure that would be needed? Because you think about federal lands, you think, one, what is around that
Right.
that would need to happen? And also, that also builds a question of how much are we doing to really try to incentivize the public-private partnership, right? So with hospitals or airports or university systems that tend to own a lot of land, how does that balance out with that version of just more expansion by going into federal lands? Just your opinion or thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, I mean, again, we think this is an all of the above approach. You hear when it comes to energy policy, all of the above, right? Fossil fuels, renewable, et cetera. I think there's an all above. We think there's an all above the approach that's needed here. Senator Mike Lee, Utah's probably one, if not two, on the list in terms of states that have the most federal land. He has a bill to open up some federal land to development. But yeah, you're right. I think there's obviously more that goes into just building some homes. You're gonna need roads. You're gonna need other grocery stores, et cetera, et cetera. But I think again, it's a start. And then to your second point of the question, I know that there are many trade orgs out there that represent shopping centers and malls and commercial real estate. I think that needs to be part of the equation too. Just on the commercial real estate front, it's easier said than done. Most buildings here in DC, can't really just convert them into, units. It just doesn't work that way. So, but I know that is something that Congress is looking at and is considering. I would say that's probably many years away, but and then finally, just to your point on hospitals and other wraparound services, I think one of the things that we've thought about here at the Twilliger Center, for those that remember the passage of the CHIPS and Science Act that would basically create new semiconductor facilities. We've had a couple ideas on, as these facilities are being built, what are they going to need? They're going to need workers, and what are those workers going to need? They're going to need a place to live. And I think members are very attuned to, where their constituents live and maybe how far they're driving, if they're a nurse, if they're a firefighter, they're a teacher. And so I think if there's creative solutions to helping those people live 10 minutes to where they work versus an hour and a half to where they work, that needs to be part of the overall comprehensive solution.
Great. Well, Michael, thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. Countdown is already on, so we're just under 55 days maybe of finding out a little bit more about some of these things we talked about today. So thanks so much for your time. We are going to get some additional policy updates from my colleague, Emmy McClintock, at this point. And so, Michael, feel free to hang on with us. And Emmy, you have the floor.
Thanks, Raquel.
Raquel. Yes, thank you so much, Mike. That was a great presentation. And yeah, like Raquel said, before we close out, I'm going to go ahead and share a few updates from NCST's policy team, starting out with some of our most recent comment letters. So on Monday, we submitted a response to FHA's proposed rule on updates to its single-family sale program, which would essentially govern the sale of seriously delinquent single-family mortgage loans insured by FHA, as well as create a new set of standardized rules for future note sales. In the letter, we expressed gratitude for the FHA taking the necessary steps to reform this program, and we also offered a number of recommendations on ways to strengthen the program by really embracing a robust nonprofit delivery system. In addition to that comment letter, we also submitted a letter to the new head of the CDFI Fund Director, Pravina Raghavan, on behalf of our New Markets Tax Credit Working Group. This working group highlighted the importance of leveraging the New Markets Tax Credit as a means to expand affordable supply, and also offered potential solutions as to how the CDFI Fund could support the program to better accommodate affordable homeownership initiatives. In addition to some of our comment letters, we continue to co-lead the Neighborhood Homes Coalition in efforts to bring the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act into passage. If this tax credit could be of use to you and your community, and you're interested in learning more, we really urge you to reach out, sign up for some of our updates. There is a lot of opportunities for comment in the next couple of months, really just expressing what you want to see happen next Congress, especially with the big tax Super Bowl coming up. So we would really love for you all to get as involved as possible. And you can reach out to Elizabeth or myself to hear more about that. And additionally, we ask that you all save the date for NCST's 2024 Policy Symposium, which will take place on November 19th at the Urban Institute here in Washington, D.C. It will also be live streamed for those of you who are interested but cannot attend in person. You'll notice that timely, like this event, it will take place just 2 weeks after the election. So it will really be a great opportunity to kind of brainstorm, what the outcome means, and what it means for housing under a new administration. We have some very exciting panels planned on both manufactured housing and heirs property. And we will also be welcoming the mayor of Philadelphia, Sherelle Parker, as our keynote speaker. So we're very excited. Registration is set to begin in the coming weeks, but if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to anyone here at NCST for more information. And finally, it's routine, but as always, we're looking for more members to join the Homeownership Alliance. If you're a nonprofit organization interested in homeownership policy or any other affordable homeownership initiatives, please reach out to Elizabeth or myself. We would love to engage with you and hear about the work you're doing. And I think that is really it from the policy team. With that, thank you all again. And Raquel, I'll pass it back to you.
Take myself off of mute. Thanks, Emmy. Lots of good information and just a great conversation today. So thank you again, Michael. Emmy, thanks for those updates. For any one of you that are attending today, if you have any questions or need any follow-ups, please let us know. And it looks like we've got a couple things in the chat. Hang tight. Emmy, if you want to put your contact information in the chat, please, along with, okay, you did. All right. Listen, you're fast, you're quick. And then we have a question. It looks like Khalil. I have a nonprofit interest. Okay. Let's see. Emmy, can you tell a little bit more on who needs more information there? Okay. I think we've got enough information to get back to folks who have provided their interest in the chat. So we won't hold you longer than we need to. So once again, it's been a delight. Thank you for joining us today, and look out for our next November Community Impact Briefing. We'll see you soon. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and thank you.